Your screen is going to change for 1 second. So I want to go ahead and introduce our presenter. We have Amy Clinton um, on today, and she will be going over her information, and you saw the training agenda as to Accion, Chicago, and the various resources and programs that they have. Amy, are you there?
Yep, I'm here, Juana.
Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, everyone. So first, I'll tell you a little bit about myself, and then we can just go ahead and dive right into information on financing and lending in Accion, Chicago. So my name is Amy Clinton. I'm the Marketing and Community Outreach Coordinator here at Accion. Before coming to Accion, I was doing new product development and social impact monitoring for a microfinance institution called SEMAS. So let's just go ahead and get into some of this information. Hopefully it will be useful to all of you. So Accion Chicago is an alternative lending organization dedicated to providing credit and other business services to small business owners who don't have access to traditional sources of financing. And we hope that in doing this, we encourage the self-reliance of micro-entrepreneurs throughout Chicagoland, and in doing so, strengthen businesses, families, and communities. So let's go ahead and get into some of the definition of credit and what credit is. So when someone lends you money and you pay them back with interest, they have extended you credit. So basically, credit is just money or funds that are being offered to you today that you will pay back over time with interest to the lender. Why is credit good for your small business? There are many important factors to helping your business grow and using credit appropriately and doing so for that kind of get you the money up front. You can also use credit to buy inventory. For example, a lot of businesses for the holiday season will need to stock up because they know they're going to have increased sales, and so it can kind of give you that upfront capital for that. People use credit to publicize their business or for marketing and advertising. Buying equipment is really important, so all businesses will eventually need equipment, whether you're a restaurant and you need freezers, or a tailoring business and you need sewing machines. Even if you're not any of those things, you'll almost definitely need a computer. So credit can help you to buy equipment, and also in obtaining working capital. So for example, we just are working with some accountants right now because they are gearing up for their busy season. And so while most of their cost is incurred right now, and they kind of need the upfront capital to get going and get through the busy season, they won't receive payment for their services until later or early next year. So there are many ways that credit can help grow your small business and be very useful. So it's just good to think about how that's going to work in your specific case. The cost of credit, most of you will probably be familiar with this already, but the principal of your loan is the amount of money that you're borrowing, and then interest is the amount of money that the lender is charging you to let you use that money. So interest is a percentage of the principal, and you'll also usually have to pay fees. So you'll see an example at the bottom. If you borrowed $5,000 at an interest rate of 10%, over 1 year you would incur $500 worth of interest payments on that loan. And then you also might have a fee, like a fee to secure collateral or something like that. So then your total cost of the loan would be $600 in addition to the $5,000 principal that you borrowed. So moving on to kind of diving in more to interest rates. And one has an interest rate of 10%, another at 25%. You can see the difference there in monthly payments, and this is just kind of a good example so that you're able to see the importance of interest rates and how that can affect both your monthly payment and the money that you end up paying over the life of the loan. So as you see in this example, with an interest rate of 10% instead of 25, you would save $7,294 over the 5-year term of this loan. So if you know that you are going to have to take out a loan, which, if you are a small business owner, you almost absolutely will at some point, it's really important to be conscious of interest rates and to be educated about how they affect your payments and the money that you're spending overall. So we're going to dive in a little bit to credit history now. Your credit history is a record of how you've paid your credit card debt and other loans in the past. Why do lenders want to know how you've paid your debts in the past? Basically, they assume that you're likely to behave in the future in a similar way to how you've behaved in the past. So if you've paid your debts well in the past, you will also pay well in the future, so lenders will assume. So basically, your credit history is like a report card on how you've been using credit. The better your credit history, the better chances you have of getting credit with lower interest rates to finance your business. So you can see just in that previous example of why interest rates are important, and the fact that people are going to be looking at your credit history for a long time, that it's crucially important both to be educated on how to use credit and to use it well. So who stores your credit history? Let's take a look at this. There are 3 big credit reporting agencies that keep a record of your credit history, and you are entitled to 1 free credit report. You won't be able to see there your score. You'll only be able to see your report itself, so you can see delinquent payments and all of the accounts that you have open, things like that. But you won't be able to see your score. If you're interested in knowing what your score is, there are websites like Credit Karma that will soft pull your credit, and that means that that pull won't appear on your credit report, but it will kind of give you an idea of where you stand on credit. So we kind of went through a little bit why a credit history is important. It's really important just to think about the fact that your credit history will follow you your entire life. And it will be reviewed not only by lenders, but also by landlords and potential employers and cell phone companies, mortgage lenders. There are a great number of people that might use your credit to kind of get a feel for how you pay your loans and handle yourself financially. So there can be costs to not having a credit history. If you don't have a credit history, don't panic. But it can be difficult to expand or invest on your business if you don't have access to credit. Like we talked about, landlords may pull your credit, future employers may pull your credit. So you may have a higher deposit to move into an apartment, or you might not be able to rent. And if you lack a credit history, you'll usually be charged a little bit higher interest rates. So going back to that example of interest rate, it's just important to keep that in mind when, trying to build a good credit history for yourself. It's important to note that avoiding the use of credit is not a good way to protect your credit. Some people say, oh, I'm just not going to use it at all because I don't want to mess it up. That can become a dangerous catch-22. If you don't use credit to build a healthy credit history, the lack of not having a credit history will on building a good credit history. Moving on, we'll talk about your credit report more specifically. So credit reports include, you can see a list there on the PowerPoint. They include personal info, judgments, trade lines, inquiries. And then you can also see a list of things that credit reports won't report on, or that lenders won't be able to see. You should note, however, that if your medical accounts go into collection, that will appear on your credit report. So they can't list such and such doctor that you saw or what your medical issues are, but they will know if your medical accounts are in collection. So that's just an important thing to keep note of. Next, you'll see a sample credit report. So this is kind of just a brief picture of what lenders or landlords or anyone who would be looking at your credit report would see. We can see your name, your date of birth, and then it will give us kind of a basic rundown of all of the accounts that you have open or the credit that has been extended to you. So we see the date that you opened it, what your credit limit was, the balance that you currently hold on the account, how much is past you kind of know what people are looking at there. So a credit score is a number that's attached to your credit report between 300 and 850. Like I said, you know, if you pull your credit report on annualcreditreport.com, you won't see your score. But the score is just kind of a basic way for lenders to see where you are with credit and how healthy your history has been. So your credit score takes into consideration, you'll see these things in the pie chart, new credit, amounts owed, what your payment history has been, the length of your credit history, and the types of credit you used. So for example, if you had a few credit cards open and you say, oh, I have a perfect payment history, that's not the only thing that comes into account when building a credit score for yourself. So you also need to think about the types of credit you've used, for example. So it's important to have both installment credit and revolving debt on your credit history, especially if you're ever interested in taking out a mortgage or getting a car loan or something like that. And it's also good to note that if you can, at all costs, avoid using all of the credit available to you. So if you had, for example, if you had like a $4,000 limit on a credit card, you wouldn't want to use all $4,000 of that credit because that will count against you. It kind of makes you appear to be, you know, desperate for credit in that way. So only use a small percentage of your available credit. Next, we'll talk a little bit about what to do if there are errors on your credit report. So you aren't powerless in this. If there's something that you see on your credit report, you can dispute it from the credit agency free of charge. So how that would work is you would just write a brief letter explaining your dispute and attach supporting documents. And the credit reporting agency has to respond to you within 30 days via mail. Word statement to your credit report, just explaining why you believe the information is inaccurate. This is important to utilize, you know, if you have contacted them and gone through all of your other available resources, just so that lenders and others looking at your credit know what happened and they've heard kind of your side of the story there. What are some of the warning signs of credit problems? There's a little bullet point list here. You're at or near the limit on credit cards, so we talked about, you know, not using the full amount of credit that is available to you. You're only making minimum payments. If possible, you should always try to make full payments on time, or if you can't, you know, pay as much as possible. But making minimum payments is never a good thing. If you've recently been denied credit or if you have defaulted on a payment, you kind of, that's a red flag there as well. So some of you may already have some dents and dings on your credit history and you're saying, okay, well this would have been great to know, you know, 20 years ago. How can I improve my credit history now that I've already built up a history a little bit? It's get current and stay current if you have missed payments. So recent late payments are more damaging than a bankruptcy discharged a few years ago. And this may seem strange to some of you. In Accion Chicago's case, you know, we work with clients of a wide range of credit histories and credit scores. what we look at is what you've done since your bankruptcy, if you have a bankruptcy on your history. Um, so it's never a good thing if we see that you have a bankruptcy, but we want to see that you have paid back all of your bills to the best of your ability, and that since your bankruptcy you've worked to improve that a little bit.
Amy,
Um,
would you tell them what your average clients, what their credit score is, so people have an idea of the range that you
sure.
service?
So we don't have numbers on the average credit score, um, but we have. I'll tell you that we've worked with people from a range of 485 to, you know, into the upper 700s and 800. So giving an average might kind of discourage people and say, oh, well, I'm far from that mark, or I have way too good of credit to apply for an Accion loan. We want to look at the whole financial picture. So we take your credit into account, um, but it's just the um, and then pay your bills on time. We kind of talked about that, so we can. Here are a few more tips. We talked about paying off your entire bill each month. If you do, you don't pay any interest on your credit card. And then we also talked about keeping low balances. Another thing that's important is not to open a lot of new accounts too quickly. So, for example, it can be tempting, especially around the holidays, to save some money by offering a credit card. Many retailers will offer you, for example, 20% off if you open a credit card. But those new credit cards and new lines of credit that are being opened on your account do show up, and opening a few or a lot of accounts quickly can be damaging to your credit score. So some of you may be wondering how to start a credit history. You can apply for an Accion small loan to start your credit history. As I said, we work with people who don't have credit histories at all and just want to start building that up a little bit and establish repayment with us. Another option is to open a secured credit card. These are credit cards that are backed by money in a savings account in a bank. And just by using this card every month and then paying it off in full every month, you can begin to establish a good payment record. I touched on this a little bit before, but it's important to build both types of credit. So to strengthen your credit history, it would be ideal for you to have experience both with revolving and and installment debt. So if you've only built credit with 1 to 2 credit cards, this is called a thin file, and that's good, and you can, move on to get installment credit later. But if you would like to buy a car or own a house, you need to apply for installment loans, and it looks good to have both types of those credit debt on your credit report, and then be able to, have a good payment record on each type of credit. So we've covered a little bit about what credit is and how credit scoring works. And now we'll move into business credit. So Dun & Bradstreet is a credit rating agency for businesses. I think that most of you calling in are small business owners, and it's really not important to report the business for your small, report your credit for your small business unless you have 9 or more employees. That's really something that is more useful for larger organizations and corporations. And it's much less expensive and cumbersome to build a small business on personal credit. However, if you applied for credit for your small business, so that's a good option. There are a number of different options for financing a small business. A term loan would be granted through financial institutions. That's, a loan for financing equipment, vehicles, and machinery. And Accion extends these loans as well as banks. There are also SBA guaranteed loans. And the SBA offers larger loan amounts than a microlender like Accion would, but those are backed by the government. So you would apply through a bank for an SBA loan, and that process works a little bit differently than ours. And then you can get a lease, so that would most commonly be used on things like renting space, office space, or renting equipment. And then a line of credit is good for short-term working capital needs or seasonal fluctuations. You know, I gave the example of an accountant who needs money up front for the high season. A line of credit pre-authorizes you to borrow up to a certain amount, but you only borrow the funds as you need, and so you wouldn't pay interest on a lump sum, but rather on the credit that you use. So now we'll move into alternative financing options for your small business. There are a number of different paths that you can take. If you qualify for a bank loan, um, that's usually a good starting point. You know, we tell people who apply through Accion, if you can get credit through a bank, we want you to do that. Accion Chicago is here. You know, if you're unable to get credit for a bank, or if you need a smaller loan amount than a bank will offer, but banks are always a great option there, as well as SBA loans. But you can also seek financing through asset-based lenders or investors, non-for-profit loan funds, Accion. So you might be wondering what lenders look for. We talk about the 6 C's of credit. Um, the most important one to Accion is your cash flow. So basically we look at your income and your expense, and we want to see that you have the available capacity to make a loan payment. We'll look at your company's financial reserves and whether or not your earnings have been reinvested. We'll also look at collateral, so what assets are available to secure your loan. Um, and then capitalization. That's all the sources of funding that the business has. We'll look at your credit report. We've talked about that in good detail. And then character and conditions are more qualitative measures that we'll take a look at. So conditions would be things that are, you know, happening in the environment around your business, like competition or the overall state of the economy, things like that. And then character is very important, at least to Accion Chicago. So we want to know, how have you handled your personal obligations in the past? Are you a person of integrity? We'll look at your references, people that you've worked with, you know, suppliers and people like that. So it's just important to be aware of these 6 areas and kind of do a self-check on where you stand and where your business stands in each of those 6 C's of credit before seeking financing. If you have deficiencies in the 6 C's, if you're looking at that and you're saying, oh, well, I don't have collateral, or, you know, my credit report has some dents and dings on it, alternative financing can help in this way. In the example of Accion Chicago, we are a little bit more flexible than banks. So we might give you a longer term to ease tight cash flow. We might work with you despite the fact that you have very little collateral, or that you do have problems on your credit report. So it's a good option if you are unable to qualify for a bank loan, just to look into your alternative financing options. So we will take your total financial picture into account. I think I had mentioned that earlier. So we look at your household income in whole, you know, not only the income that you're garnering from your small business. If you receive Social Security benefits, alimony, child support, things like that, we take all of that into account, whereas a more traditional source of financing might not do that. In 1961, and it began as a student-run volunteer effort in Caracas, Venezuela. We're one of the premier microfinance organizations in the world and have a large network of lending partners that extends throughout the globe. Accion, the Accion network operates only in the United States under the banner of Accion International. But we have lent $272 million since 1991, when the network was founded, and have many different offices throughout the U.S. So there are offices in New York, Texas, Louisiana, um, San Diego, kind of all over there. And we can proudly say that we provide 75% of microloans in the U.S. Accion Chicago was launched in 1994, initially under the banner of Accion International, and we're now affiliated with the Accion USA network.
Amy, could you share what those that may be located further down south in the state
Sure.
could do? So some of our participants are not in the Chicagoland area.
Absolutely. So Accion Chicago lends in 13 counties in the Chicagoland area. If you aren't in one of the counties in which we service, you can call Accion USA. I would visit their website. Their website is www.accionusa.org. And I'll give you their phone number as well. That's 866-245-0783. And Accion USA lends throughout the entire country. So if you aren't near an Accion office that services your direct area, you can always get a loan through Accion USA. I'll tell you a little bit more about Accion Chicago and our experience. We've been operating for 7 years, and we've worked with more than 2,000 micro enterprises, and lent more than $17 million. In 2010, we closed 205 loans, and this year, I think year to date, we've closed 273. So we're set to well exceed 2010's numbers. And we're one of the 10 largest microlenders in the country. We try to be transparent in our loan process and to close your loan quickly. I tell people when they call that the process moves as fast or slow as you want it to. And so if you really are motivated to get in your loan documents, we will work with you to close the loan, within 5 to 10 days. Otherwise, if it takes I didn't talk too much about our partnerships. We have a lot of technical assistance partnerships with small business development centers and organizations like that. And so if someone calls and maybe you're not ready for financing or you're not ready for a loan, but you need to work on a business plan or you need legal assistance or what have you, we try to get you to the technical assistance that you need. So hopefully, if you're not ready for financing or if we're unable to do a loan, we're able to point you to the next step in your business development process. And I think that's really valuable.
Absolutely, and I just wanted to add, we do a lot of partnerships with those exact groups as well. And if you use the Find a Location Near You, and I'm going to add the link here, you can actually locate your local small business development centers, find the Illinois Worknet centers that offer business services, or connect with your SCORE team, for instance. So some great nonprofits and resources out there for those of you that are not lending ready yet to be able to access that kind of service or resource.
Yeah, there are amazing resources out there. You just kind of have to know where to go to find them. So this website is an absolutely great place to start. Thanks, Juana. So our loan terms, we loan up to $15,000 for startup businesses and up to $25,000 for existing business. And people ask, well, am I a startup? Am I existing? We consider a startup to be a business that's been operating for a year or less. Our loan terms range from 2 to 60 months with interest rates between 13 and 18%. I think it says there that our average is 14%. We also have quite a few lower rate programs available for qualified clients. So, when I say that our interest rates range between 13 and 18, you can see based on the average that there are quite a few people getting less than, that high cap of 18. And then you have to be eligible for the loan. There's more information on this on the application. We would like for our entrepreneurs to have industry experience, clean or improving credit history. Um, we, we really want to see that you understand the finances of the business and that you've put a lot of thought into it, especially if you're a startup business. We like to see a good business plan and just the fact that you have really prepared and thought about, how you're going to start this business and all the details going into it. It's great if you can pledge collateral or put a cosigner on your loan. And we require that you be a for-profit business, although we are a nonprofit ourselves. The one thing, all of these eligibility requirements we can kind of flex on a little bit, and that's part of our role as a nonprofit lender. However, the cash flow point that you see on that slide, cash flow available to service the debt, is going to be really key. So we like for startup businesses to have outside income coming in. We won't be able to make a loan based on projections. So we need to see that as your current financial looks right now, you have the cash available to service the debt that we would give you. And that's both to protect ourselves and to protect you, because we don't want to give people a loan that will cause them to default on other loans or will weaken their business overall. So that's just a really important point to understand. I'll walk you through our loan process a little bit. The first step usually is that a small business owner would give us a call. I handle intake calls, so you would probably talk to me if you called, and I could give you a little bit more information and fill in the holes of this presentation. But we'll pre-qualify you over the phone and kind of just talk you through the application process and make sure that you would be a good fit for us. And then the next step is to fill out that online application. If you feel like from this presentation you know that you would be a good fit, you can go ahead and go right to that application. And then we would pre-approve you for a certain amount, and you would hear back from us after filling out that online application. And then you would start to gather documents for underwriting review. We might do a site visit depending on where you're located and what we see in the application, and then your loan will be brought to credit committee.
For this process, so they know how long it would take to get the loan?
Sure. So like I said, the timing of the loan is kind of up to the applicant. However, when you apply with us, you should hear back from a loan officer within 2 to 4 business days. So if you were to apply online and you hadn't heard back from a week, that should never happen, but if it did, you should give us a call. Once we have your application and you've been pre-approved, basically the process just takes as long as it does for you to get all your documents in. So we might ask for tax returns and bank statements. And that's usually the thing that ends up slowing the process the most. But I would give it 2 to 3 weeks to be safe from when you need your money. But a lot of times if you are really organized, we can move things along pretty quickly. So that kind of concludes our overall presentation, and I know we'll have some time for questions after this, but the next slide is contact information. So you have my phone number and email there, and then you can also find information on our website. I think, let's see, it looks like the slide has Trina's information, who is my colleague, but it's aclinton@accionchicago.org for my email. So it's just first initial, last name, same format. And then my extension is 105. The phone number is the same. Interested small business owners who would like to learn more about credit or learn more about our services. So those are really good ways to just find out about what's going on at Accion Chicago. And then you could also join the Microfinance Alliance. So that is our kind of volunteer corps of people working with Accion. We'll use your emails from the registration for this webinar to add to our newsletter list, so you'll get an update from us pretty soon here. But if you're not interested in receiving our newsletter, you can always unsubscribe and we'll delete your email from our records.
Very good. So I'm going to go ahead and switch your screen and begin the Q&A portion of the webinar on our end for next steps, just so you all know if you don't have a business account with Illinois Worknet or even an individual's account, go ahead and get registered. It's free, and basically you just get lots of informational emails about webinars such as this one or various programs coming out. So it's just for you to kind of get connected and get the latest when it comes to growing your business or workforce needs. As well as up at the top of the portal, we have a LinkedIn group. I think we have over 700 people part of that. So I remind you to go ahead and download the information in the file share if you do want to apply. And I'm going to go ahead and get started. And if you could please rate this webinar, it's really important for us because we need to know how relevant and applicable this was for you. So, okay, so really quickly, Amy, would you share with them one, what's the default rate of loans? So you're dealing with various types of people that don't necessarily have the best credit. So what's in it for you that, obviously there's a higher percentage rate, but how many people actually pay back the money that they borrow?
Our default rates range between 4% and 10%. I think this year, we're getting close to year end here, we're going to close at around 6% default.
Got it. That's pretty impressive, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure, Chase can't say that, or Bank of America. So I'd asked the question earlier, and he said, at which stage of the business cycle does a small startup business become viable for a loan? Is it usually after launch, or can it be in the pre-launch development phase too?
Yeah, that's a great question. It depends kind of on your business plan. You can really just seek financing whenever you feel is best for your business, depending on what you're doing. But we can definitely help you with a loan as you're starting the process. So many businesses need a loan before they're able to launch, just because they need to buy equipment in order to do what they're going to do or provide the service that they will provide in their business. So we can help you at any point in that process. It just kind of depends on your business plan and what your needs are more specifically.
Kim also asks, what do you need if you're looking to buy an existing business from someone?
That's also a great question. So we have quite a few clients that have come to us for a loan to buy an existing business, one that they maybe didn't start. So it would be helpful if you're looking into buying an existing business, if you could obtain all of the financial information from the business, such as balance sheet, the year-to-date profit and loss, and tax returns, that'll just help us have a clear picture of what the business looks like and kind of what you're getting into and what the needs are for financing. And then that buy Absolutely. Yep.
So what are the average amounts that you're lending?
Our average loan amount is about $7,000. So like I said, we offer up to 15 for startups or up to 25, but average 7.
So it's safe to say that those that are looking to borrow money, I don't know, like $100,000 should definitely look into other programs that, for instance, like I was mentioning on the chat, the Advantage Illinois lending programs and whatnot.
Yeah, that's a great resource. So we are only able to do up to 25 at this point. We have done some loans where we will offer part of the capital, and maybe the borrower can get financing from a bank or another financial institution. So that's an option. But if you're looking for more, like you mentioned, 100,000, it would be good to check out some of those other resources.
Now, would you say is it common for business owners to piggyback or get multiple loans in order to obtain the money that they need for their startup?
Yeah, it's fairly common. It's not, we don't see that every day, but it's a good option. A lot of times we can act as a second lien holder on a loan. So if you had like $50,000 from a bank and you needed just a little bit extra for some equipment or a little bit of extra working capital, we would definitely be able to work with you on that. Again, we'd just take a look at your overall financial picture, and we'd want to see that you have the capacity to be able to make consistent loan payments with us.
Would you say that a good business plan makes a difference in your decision to lend someone money?
Yeah,
Even if they
absolutely.
even if they don't maybe have really great credit, would you say that their business plan is something that would help?
A business plan will help. We'll also look at factors like if you have previous experience in the industry that you're going into and things like that. Um, a business plan will help us feel a lot more comfortable and confident in offering you a loan. So I mentioned in the process of getting a loan, one of the last steps is that your loan will go to our loan committee, and if we can present them with an awesome business plan that looks, really well thought out, and healthy, then that will help. Again, we'll look at the entire picture. So if you have damaged credit, you might not qualify for our full 15 or 25,000. We might start you at a smaller loan and have you establish repayment and kind of build up a history with us. And in that way, you kind of establish that history, and then we can refinance later to offer you a larger loan. So that's an option, but a business plan definitely will never hurt you. It's always a great thing to see there. So, yeah.
So another question I have, do you have to be a U.S. citizen to be able to apply for these loans with Accion?
You don't have to be a U.S. citizen. You do have to have an I-10 number. So you basically have to be paying taxes in the U.S., but being a citizen is not a requirement.
So any other questions from our participants?
I know there was a question in yesterday's session. Someone asked about an EIN number and if that's necessary to apply. It's not necessary. An EIN number is an option if you choose to go that route in legally constituting your business. But sole proprietorships would not have an EIN number. So if you are a sole proprietorship or you just don't have one yet at this point in your business, that's okay. You can still apply for an Accion loan.
It looks like everybody is, you were so good, Amy, that they have no questions.
Great. I hope it was helpful.
I see a couple of people typing. I just want to make sure that we give them a chance. But definitely very impressive in the sense that when we were on the lending webinar with Advantage Illinois, so many people getting smaller loans, which I thought was really interesting considering, the type of program that was. And for me, it's just amazing. I feel like I always get the opportunity to learn about great new programs or organizations that offer these resources because of what I do in my line of work. And so for me, I'm just excited to be able to give other people the opportunity to learn what they do have available to become successful businesses, because I think this is fantastic, and what Accion does and provides is fantastic for small business owners. It looks like people are very happy and informed, so that's great. Please go ahead and rate the webinar and add any other questions or best practices you may have. I will send everyone an email to let you know how to access the archived webinar. It'll include the chat session and all the other information that you may need to apply or to get your fact sheets for the lending process. We also have a branding option for Illinois Worknet if you're a small business and you want to kind of harness our users and our traffic. We have about 2.5 million hits on Illinois Worknet, so it's a good way to be able to take that, get some free exposure, and then take that traffic and move it either to your Facebook page or your LinkedIn page or your website. So that information is in the file share, as well as some information on business services and whatnot. So thank you so much, everyone, for participating, and we'll see you on the next webinar.